Welcome back to Velmyst, UK. In 2019, workers began restoring a centuries-old church in England. The building had stood for hundreds of years. Generations had worshipped there. Wars had come and gone. Yet nobody imagined that the church itself was hiding a secret. Because while removing damaged plaster near an old side chapel, one worker noticed something strange.
The wall didn't sound solid. Behind it, there seemed to be empty space.
And what they would eventually discover would take historians centuries into the past. At first, everyone assumed it was simply part of the structure, but then a narrow outline appeared beneath the dust, a shape, perfectly rectangular, almost like a doorway. But if this really was a door, why had it been sealed? Who closed it? And what had remained hidden behind it for hundreds of years? The church itself dated back to medieval times, long before electricity, long before modern Britain. Its walls had witnessed baptisms, funerals, and countless prayers, but over the centuries, renovations had changed the building, and some parts had simply been forgotten. As workers carefully removed more plaster, the outline became clearer. It wasn't just a crack. It wasn't damage. It was a doorway, and it had been sealed deliberately, which raised an unsettling question. What had they wanted to keep out? Or perhaps, what had they wanted to keep hidden? Restoration work stopped immediately. Historians were called, and when they arrived, their excitement was impossible to hide, because churches across Britain had occasionally revealed hidden crypts, forgotten chambers, and even priest holes. But nobody expected to find one here. Slowly, stone after stone was removed, until finally, a dark opening appeared. And from inside, cold air emerged, air that had perhaps not circulated for centuries. Everyone fell silent. Using flashlights, they peered inside. At first, nothing, only darkness. But then, steps, stone steps, leading downward, and suddenly, the mystery became much bigger. Nobody entered immediately, because if there really was a hidden chamber, anything inside could be fragile or historically priceless. So experts prepared carefully, and as they lowered their lights, something appeared at the bottom. Not treasure, not gold, but something far more interesting. A room, small, silent, and untouched, almost like time itself had stopped there. And then, one historian noticed something resting against the wall, covered in dust, forgotten, and perhaps untouched for hundreds of years. Nobody moved because everyone understood. This was no longer a restoration. It was a journey into history. As the historian carefully approached, he realized it wasn't just an object. It was a wooden chest, and whatever lay inside had remained hidden beneath the church for centuries. Nobody touched the chest immediately. The air inside the chamber felt heavy, still, almost sacred. Whatever rested inside that box had survived wars, storms, and centuries of silence. And now, for the first time in hundreds of years, someone was about to see it again. Conservators carefully brushed away layers of dust. The wood itself was old, very old. Iron fittings covered its surface, and despite centuries underground, the chest remained remarkably intact, which meant one thing: someone had wanted its contents protected. Slowly, the lid was raised. Everyone leaned closer, expecting treasure, gold, something valuable. But what they found surprised everyone. Inside were old books, wrapped carefully in cloth, and beside them a silver cross. At first glance, the books seemed ordinary, but historians quickly realized they were handwritten, page after page, line after line, words copied by hand centuries ago. And suddenly, the discovery became far more important than treasure. Church records revealed something remarkable. During the English Reformation, many religious texts had been destroyed. Others disappeared forever.
And some priests hid precious manuscripts inside churches, hoping future generations would one day find them. But there was something else, something nobody expected. Behind the chest, the wall itself seemed unusual. One section was different, newer, as though someone had sealed something else. And suddenly, everyone had more questions than answers. Using careful measurements, experts discovered a hollow space behind the stones. Not large, but large enough for something important, or perhaps someone. Churches throughout Britain sometimes contain hidden crypts, burial chambers, forgotten passages, and secret rooms built during times of danger. But nobody expected to find another chamber beneath this church. As the final stones were removed, a narrow opening appeared, and beyond it, only darkness. But then, one historian's flashlight reflected off something unexpected. Not stone, not wood, but metal, old metal. And everyone froze. Slowly, the light moved closer, and what emerged from the darkness made the room fall silent. Because hidden beneath the church, waiting in complete darkness, was something nobody had expected to find. And at that moment, everyone knew the mystery had only just begun. Nobody spoke. The beam of the flashlight remained fixed on the object, half buried beneath centuries of dust. Slowly, one historian stepped forward, and as he brushed away the debris, its shape became clear. It wasn't treasure. It wasn't a weapon. It was a metal casket, beautifully crafted, and far older than anyone expected. The casket was covered in strange carvings, crosses, flowers, and symbols historians recognized immediately. These weren't decorations. They were medieval, and they suggested something extraordinary, because objects like this were often used to protect sacred relics. Church records were searched once again, and slowly, a forgotten story emerged. In the 15th century, this church had suffered a devastating fire. Many believed precious objects had been destroyed forever, but perhaps someone had hidden them and never returned. Carefully, experts opened the casket. Inside, they found no gold, no jewels, only old parchment, fragments of cloth, and a small wooden cross. Simple objects, but objects filled with meaning. Then something unexpected happened. One historian noticed strange markings on the chamber floor. Not cracks, not damage, but symbols carved deliberately into the stone centuries ago, and they appeared to point somewhere. Following the markings, they reached the far wall, and there, hidden beneath loose stones, they discovered another opening, smaller than the first, almost invisible, and suddenly, everyone realized the church still had secrets left to reveal. This passage was different, much narrower, and unlike the chamber above, it descended deeper underground, into complete darkness, a place untouched by sunlight for hundreds of years. As lights illuminated the darkness, something appeared. Rows of stone structures, ancient, silent, and arranged with great care. The historians stared in disbelief, because they had found something nobody had expected, a forgotten crypt. But one tomb stood apart from the others, larger and marked with symbols unlike anything else inside the crypt. No name, no inscription, only silence and centuries of mystery. As one historian carefully removed the dust from its surface, his flashlight revealed something strange. Letters, almost erased by time, and suddenly the room fell silent, because whatever name had once been carved there might finally reveal who had been hidden beneath the church all along. Slowly, carefully, the historians brushed away centuries of dust, and beneath the dirt, letters began to appear.
Faded, damaged, almost lost to time, but enough remained to reveal one thing. This tomb had belonged to someone important, very important. And suddenly, the forgotten crypt became far more mysterious. Old records were searched once again, parish archives, ancient maps, forgotten manuscripts, and eventually, they found references to a noble family connected to the church, a family that had disappeared from local records after a violent conflict centuries earlier. According to surviving accounts, the family had funded repairs to the church, protected local villagers, and buried their dead beneath sacred ground. But after war swept across England, their names slowly vanished, almost as though history had forgotten them, but someone had clearly remembered. Someone had sealed the crypt, protected the relics, and hidden the entrance behind stone walls, not to conceal treasure, but to preserve memories. Memories they feared would disappear forever. Then, one archaeologist noticed something unusual. Near the foot of the large tomb, there appeared to be a small cavity, almost invisible beneath layers of dirt. And inside, something was resting. Carefully, they removed the object. A leather pouch, fragile, dry, and incredibly old. Nobody expected leather to survive for so long, yet somehow, it had. And what lay inside would become the most emotional discovery of all. Inside the pouch, there was no gold, no jewels, only folded papers, letters, written by hand. Words left behind by people who had lived centuries before. Words never meant to be forgotten. One sentence moved everyone. May those who come after us remember that we loved this place and prayed it would survive. And suddenly, the room fell silent, because these voices had waited centuries to be heard again. The forgotten crypt, the sealed door. None of it had been created to hide riches. It had been created to protect something far more precious: memory, faith, and hope. But as historians prepared to leave, one final detail stopped them. Because high above the tomb, carved into the ceiling, they noticed a symbol nobody had seen before. A symbol unlike anything found elsewhere in the church. And suddenly, one question remained. Who had carved it, and why? For months, historians studied the strange symbol carved into the ceiling. It wasn't royal, it wasn't military, and it wasn't unique. Eventually, they found similar markings in other medieval churches. Simple symbols carved by stonemasons. Not messages, not warnings, but signatures. Quiet reminders that even ordinary craftsmen wished to leave something behind. And suddenly, everything made sense. The sealed chamber, the hidden crypt, the forgotten letters. None of it had been created to hide treasure. It had been built to protect memories. Memories people feared would disappear forever. Experts concluded that during centuries of war and religious change, someone had sealed the entrance intentionally, not out of fear, but out of love. Love for the church, love for their family, and hope that one day, someone would remember. The letters found inside the leather pouch became the most precious discovery. But because they were human, ordinary people, writing ordinary words, and unknowingly speaking to people 400 years in the future, one sentence remained in everyone's mind. May those who come after us remember that we loved this place and prayed it would survive. And somehow, against all odds, their wish had come true. Eventually, the hidden chamber was preserved. Not hidden again, but protected, so future generations could understand the people who had once lived there, and remember the stories they almost lost. The workers had begun a simple restoration, nothing more. But behind an ordinary wall, they had discovered a forgotten chapter of history. And perhaps that is where history often waits, not inside castles or palaces, but quietly, behind doors nobody remembers. Because sometimes, the greatest treasures are not made of gold. Sometimes they are memories, stories, and voices that refuse to disappear. And perhaps somewhere across Britain, another hidden room still waits, another forgotten door, another voice from the past,
Patiently waiting to be heard again.
Thank you for joining us on tonight's journey. And remember, history doesn't always sleep beneath famous monuments. Sometimes it waits behind a forgotten door. We'll see you again on our next journey into Britain's hidden past. If you enjoy hidden mysteries, forgotten history, and relaxing true stories, please subscribe to velmyst UK and join us again for another journey into the past.